This is Monique. Welcome to One Mo Project. This is Kate Can Crochet Project 2. In the first project, Kate learned how to chain and single crochet. This time we're going to add double crochet and slip stitch to that. So here we go. So I use this sugar and cream, which is a cotton. I just like that better for the washcloth. And I use these plastic canvas needles and a crochet hook. How do you know what size? Look here on the back. See, this one calls for a 5mm. I couldn't find mine, so I used a 5.5, but I was close enough. Now, how to cast on. We're going to look at that again. Make the loop and cross it over. Do you see how that went over the top? And then pull it down tight until it's up against the needle, the hook. Now, always want to make sure that it's on that smooth part of the hook, not where it starts to taper down, because that way it makes it the right size. And even still, sometimes it can be hard to get the hook back through. So we're gonna chain. So yarn over and pull through. Yarn over, pull through. Chain's pretty easy. I think you probably have the hang of that one. But this time we're gonna chain 25. And I'm gonna show you what this might look like if you had instructions. So there's 24 and 25. And if you were reading a book, it would say chain 25. And that's not usually considered the first row or anything. That's just chain 25. And then the next instructions will say something usually like in the second loop or in the second hole or in the second stitch, something like that, from the hook, whatever it is you're going to do. Chain 1 is what this one is. So this time you're going through one yarn. So you have this, it's hard to get it through there sometimes because when you chain it can be too tight. You have the previous loop on there and then you're going through. So you start with the loop that you have on there, then you go through that chain stitch, but you're only picking up one more yarn across your hook. So then you have 2 loops on your yarn, on your hook. If you go back and look at your hook, you can see that there's wrapped twice, if I can ever get it to go through that little hole. And then you yarn over and pull through, and you're back at 2 again. Yarn over and you have 3, pull through, and you're back to 1. It's hard to say how to do it sometimes, but because it's like 2 and 1 and 3 and 2, but go, you have 1 on there, and then you go through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 2. All right, so you're going to do that all the way across, and we made 25 chains, but because we skipped 1 to turn, we're going to end up with 24. So single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain across. And then it says 24 single crochet. I don't know what the deal with always like SC for single crochet instead of spelling it out in the instructions. I don't know. Did they do it back when they had to send it by telegraph? I don't know how these became the standard. Anyway, you can go back and count to make sure you have the 24. But how can you tell when you're at the end? So I went through what looked like the last one, and then when I pulled there were no more loops to go through, just the hole. Now there's the knot. Now we're going to chain 2 and turn it. Chain 2 is because we're doing a double crochet. If we were doing a single crochet, we would only chain 1. That's usually in the instructions. So yarn over, and then we're going to go through the first stitch. Sometimes that chain 2 that you did counts, but for this project it's not going to count. So it'll only be your double crochets that count as you go across to make sure you end up with 24. Let's talk about a double crochet. Yarn over, go through. Now there's 2 because this time we're going through that single crochet. There's 2 pieces of yarn that go across the top, and you're going to go through both of them. See there, I kind of opened up where you can see 1 and 2, but you're going to go through both of those so that it goes all the way straight through. There are occasionally projects that will tell you front loop and back loop, no back loops, only back loops. But that's not what we're working on today. For today, you're going to go through the 2. See how there's those little half circle looking things on the top? I don't know. Anyway, so then let's go ahead and finish that double crochet and do one more. Yarn over, go through, and go through both of those yarn pieces there. And then yarn over and pull through. Now you have 3 loops of yarn across your needle. You're going to yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2, and that's why it's a double crochet. So yarn over, go through the stitch below, pull through, then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Row 2, chain 2, turn, double crochet in each stitch across, and you're going to end up with 24 double crochets. So you can go back and count those when you're done and make sure that you have the 24 that you're supposed to have. And if you don't, then we can maybe try to figure out what the problem is. But 24 across. And when you get to the other end, let's look at how do you know when it's time to stop. Because sometimes when you've done that chain 1 before you turn, it's hard to see where the last stitch in that row is. So once we get to the end, we'll slow down and look at where the last stitch goes. Okay? Here we are. So that last one, see how there's a little bit of a loop around the end that I'm holding with my left hand? And then pull through, pull through. Now, when I pull it out again, pull out that first row, that single crochet, there's not an obvious place to put it, but this would be a time to go back and count. All right, now chain 1 before you turn, because we're going to do single crochet back across this row. And this one is only different from the first one because when you go through there, there's 2 yarns to go through instead of the 1 like we had on the chain. And that's because we're attaching it to a double crochet instead of into a chain. So row 3, chain 1, turn, single crochet across, 24 single crochet. And that's all this is, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, is single crochets and then double crochets. Each row is just one thing all the way across. And then there's 24 of each of them when you get to the end. Now there's the last single crochet. So go through and, I'm sorry, that was the top of the last double crochet. And then we chain 2 and turn. Okay, so you're going to just keep doing that back and forth until you have something that's kind of like a square. But like I said, you can always go back and count. So see right there, there's 3 yellow crochets toward the yellow double crochets toward the left side of it. All right, so then once you get something that's kind of like a square, mine was 19 rows. It's uneven because there's a single crochet row at the top and a single crochet row at the bottom. That's because of how I wanted to add this little bit of border around the outside. So I lost my loop there for a minute. When I walk away from my project, I always pull a big loop like that. Instead of trying to make sure it stays on the hook, I just pull a big loop. So now we're gonna single crochet 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Nope, 2. We're still on 2. Need a little more slack in my yarn. 3. Oh, did I lose count? It's amazing how hard it can be sometimes to just count to 3. See there, I got confused. I have to back up because I only had 2 single crochets. So this makes 3 single crochets. And then chain 3. See how I keep my thumb on my left hand kind of up close to where I'm working to hold some tension on it. Then I single crochet back in the same place that the last single crochet was before the chain. So there's 3 single crochets and then 3 chains and then back into the same hole. So let's look again. Here's the 3 chains and it goes back in that same hole in that same stitch that the last single crochet is. So that counts as 1, and then do 2 more and then chain 3. And that gives you this sort of ruffly edge around the side instead of just straight. And it shows one way to combine a chain and a single crochet. At the end, once we get all the way around all the sides, we're going to do a different combination with a chain and a single crochet that makes a totally different thing. Now it's obvious where to put these stitches when you go across the single crochet, on the top and the bottom, because you just go right into the single crochet below it. But when you turn and you're going down the side of the work, it's pretty much always that when you have a double crochet, you're going to need 2 single crochets in that space, and where there's 1, you're going to need 1. If you change if you change hooks or did something weird, that could be a problem. But for this, that'll be the way to know what how many to do down the side. Where there's a single crochet, you're going to do 1 in that space on the side, and where there's a double crochet, you'll do your 2 single crochets into that side. But still down this side, you're going to do the 3 chain, 3 single crochet, 3 chain. Now I'm at the corner where we started, so see there's that tail from the yarn. I'm just catching that. As I crochet, I'm keeping that up against the other and catching that so that I don't have to go back later and put it on the needle and stitch it in. It's just going to lay there nice and smooth. It sticks out a little at the end, that's why I didn't have to do the whole thing, but just enough to hold it in there. And then I continue with the chain 3, single crochet 3. Okay? So see over here on the bottom, there is the little bit of thread sticking out from the very beginning of it, and so I'm just going to cut that off flush with the yarn. All right, so there's the washcloth. But since I had a bunch left, I didn't use up that whole skein of yarn. I thought we would make a loop up here on the corner. So I'm going to start by chaining 10. Just straight out away from it, chain 10. But then when I get done, I'm going to go down here and slip stitch. So this loop is chain 10, slip stitch into the starting space. So even if you don't find it exactly in the right space, don't sweat over that. But go back down to where you started. You have 1 loop of yarn on your hook. So you're going to go through, you have that one that was on there, yarn over and pull through. But instead of yarning over again, you're just going to catch the hook that's at the far end and pull it through the one that's closer, and then you have a slip stitch. Now we're going to go all the way around this. You could stop there and tie it off and this loop would work. But this is a way that you combine chain and single crochet. It's 18. The instructions will show up in a second. There we go. 18 single crochets to go around. So this reads loop, round 1, single crochet 18, slip stitch, fasten off. So the easiest part is the single crochet 18. The others are things that you only do once on each project, so I'll slow down and show you how to do those after I finish these 18 single crochets around. So once I'm done, 18. Once I'm done, I'm going to slip stitch again. I'm going to go through at the base of where the loop is, yarn over and pull it through, and then just pull that loop all the way through. And then I'm going to make a big loop of yarn so I can make sure everything looks good before I cut it off and have to tie it back on. I don't want to do that. So then I always check to make sure I'm cutting the long tail of the yarn so that I have plenty to work with. Then pull that loop the rest of the way through. So that's the slip stitch. And now we're going to finish off. This is time for that tapestry needle that you got with the big hole in it, the big eye. And these are blunt. They don't have sharp points. If you had one that had a sharp point, it would work. But if you're looking for one to replace it, get the one that doesn't have a sharp point. And even though it's got a big eye, sometimes it's hard to get through there because the yarn wants to separate. So I just used my thumbnail there and pushed that up through so that I could not have to keep fighting with it. I don't pull it very far down onto the yarn because it untwists it as it goes. So I just went ahead and pulled it just a little bit. Now I'm going to go through where the single crochet wraps around the chain. And because of that, there's never a time when you can really see that needle on either side because it's in the middle of all of those loops where the chain is hidden by the single crochet. And I do a little chunk at a time. It's a circle, so you couldn't flatten it out and make it go all the way around. So I do a couple of little chunks of it at a time so that I can get it all the way around. This is probably overkill, but if I'm going to hang this up by this loop, I just thought I always think this is going to make it just a little bit stronger than if I just have it where it's attached. So this way I get to go back around and give it a little more strength. And so once I get all the way around, I'm just going to tie a knot right there at the base of it. Not a big crazy knot, but just one overhand knot, catching whatever I can there. And that catching it helps pull it down tight. Then I'm going to go the opposite direction that I just did back. It wouldn't matter which direction you went. You could go either way. But I'm just going to go part of the way so that I can, when I cut the tail of the thread, I don't have to cut it right up against the knot. If you cut it right up against the knot can come out. So this way I can put the tail into something and hide it, but leave it long enough to not let it slip out. Cut that off, and there we go. Project 2. And look, see that nice loop? Yeah. I didn't leave it in the viewfinder, but anyway, here is your project 2. Great job. All right, Kate, I hope that is useful. I hope that answered your question about where to put your crochet hook as you make each stitch. And I think maybe you could do this one twice just to get in that extra practice, because you're only doing that double crochet on half of the row. So maybe go ahead and do this one twice. Anyway, I look forward to seeing it when it's done. I want to remind you of this verse that says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Crocheting is almost like knitting. Just gives us a little peek at how amazing God is and how creative He is. All right, look forward to seeing your finished project. See you next time.